And we are back, and we are joined right now by our good friend, Susan Ferrechio, Chief Congressional Correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
It's always my pleasure. Hope you're well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the week ahead, as you wrote at the Examiner, and this is the last work week of the year. Gee, if only it were the last work week of the year for us all. I mean, I pity these poor guys and ladies. And they're looking, we're getting closer anyway to that the deadline on the budget and on the debt ceiling and all that. Where are we? How close are we to possibly getting some kind of budget deal passed? Is that beyond the realm of possibility?
Yes, I think it'll be a smaller deal that only gives us a number for next year and perhaps the year after. But its main accomplishment will be to restore. This may not appeal to conservatives out there, but would be to restore the cuts that came under the sequester. Some of them would be replaced and split between military and domestic priorities, and that would be paid for in the course of this deal through an increase in government fees, which are taxes, but they like to call them fees so that they don't think you're raising your taxes. So that's how they're going to accomplish it. They're going to sneak these fees into various things that people pay for every day, like airline tickets or when you buy a mortgage, or maybe more money and to go be contributed into your pension. This way they can avoid the overall tax increase, which is so politically damaging.
But Susan, so I'm kind of dumbfounded sitting here. So what's the purpose of the Republicans, hiding tax increases and doing away with sequester? What are they gaining out of this? And isn't it going to tick off, the base?
Yes, it is. But what they're gaining out of it is money for the military. They don't like there's a huge contingency of Republicans who felt that these sequester cuts were far too damaging to the military. Now, if they had their druthers, they just simply cut more out of the domestic budget and move it into the military. But, you can't do that. You have to cut a deal with Democrats. So how do you do it? You create an alliance with some very liberal members who want to put more money into domestic spending, and then you agree, hey, I'll let you have your military spending, you let me have my domestic spending, and we find a way to pay for it that's palatable to both sides. Now, let's look at what the palatable means. You know that Democrats are already saying no way to entitlement cuts right now. The deal is in too short of a time frame for them to get that hammered out. And then the other thing, Republicans are like, we're not raising taxes, forget it. And both sides feel they have some bit of leverage. They're both down in the polls. Everybody's been dinged one way or another. So neither side has the appetite to push this to the limit and create a scenario where January comes and we don't have a budget deal and we face this government shutdown again. So that's the ingredients for a deal on Capitol Hill. So they have their ingredients, and now at this moment, we haven't seen the deal specifically, but supposedly it involves, picking away at the edges of other programs, raising fees here and there, and somehow coming up with $65 billion to raise spending above the $1 trillion mark. They probably won't get a lot of conservative Republicans on board for this, but you don't need them. You can pass it with Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate, and voila, there's your budget deal.
And are they doing this? Will the Republicans who vote for this feel that they're insulated because the focus is now on Obamacare and that's what everybody's going to be running on, and no one's going to make a big deal of this anyway? Well, they run away. It's not so much that they're running toward this deal. They're running away from the idea of a government shutdown. They have to do something. And now Republicans got stung pretty bad the last time, if you recall, on the government shutdown. They always get blamed no matter what they do, no matter whose fault it is. Everyone blames the Republicans, even though it's probably both parties' fault. So they want to avoid that. And then the Republicans can finally claim they've helped restore money to our nation's military. And let's face it, cutting spending is not popular with constituents anyway. And so I think it's more palatable for them to have this deal work out where they can say, we didn't restore all of the sequester still in place in part, but we restored some of the funding to things that we thought were vitally important, because some of the sequester cuts, as they call, is taking a hatchet to the budget that fixes it in their minds, and it does not raise taxes, and it doesn't cut your Medicare or your Social Security. So right.
They feel like, well, it's they considering the gulf between the two parties right now. Reaching any deal will be, you will hear people celebrating this. However, you will not hear conservatives celebrate this. You will hear them say it's a sellout. Republicans committed the ultimate sin here by stuffing money back in that was cut from the sequester and then using these governmental fees, which are taxes, to do it. So it's not going to be popular with really conservative members. In fact, I think Heritage will key vote this, I think. I don't think they like it. Heritage, which is a very conservative.
Well, I don't like it. I mean, I was a little taken aback. So we're talking to Susan Ferrechio, Chief Congressional Correspondent at the Washington Examiner here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Let me ask you about the extension of unemployment benefits. Where does that stand? Because, Nancy Pelosi said there'd be no deal, although I don't know if she was talking about a budget deal or just any kind of agreement overall without that extension.
That's right. They've softened on that, and as one conservative just pointed out.
Who has softened on it? The Republicans
the
or
Democrats have, because they're getting so many goodies out of the budget deal. They don't want to jeopardize it over unemployment insurance. So, though they're willing to forego insisting that be included in the deal, which is dangerous. It could mean we don't get a deal on that before we leave. But they want it in another bill. But they are willing. I've heard various Democratic leaders say, we're not going to make this a make or break thing in the budget deal. We'll still go along if extension of unemployment benefits is not included. So, and that a conservative just pointed out to me is because they're getting a lot of good things out of the rest of this budget deal. So I think we ought to be taking a close look at that budget deal. If Democrats love it, then you're probably conservatives won't.
Yeah, I would assume that's the case. All right, let's talk about the Senate. The 2014 National Defense Authorization Act, which, of course, sets a policy for the Pentagon. Where is that? There are amendments that senators have been unable to agree on, including one on Iranian sanctions. So where are we going to go with that one?
Nowhere. That's a good question. As we speak, there is a move right now to move a bill forward that excludes the controversial elements so they can just get the thing done. So I don't think, you just heard the Iranian prime minister say, we're not going to negotiate if there's a threat over our heads. So the ingredients are all there for defense authorization to go forward in a really uncomplicated way. It would shed all of these components that have been holding it up. Remember the sexual assault provision by Kristen Gillibrand of New York?
Right.
I don't think that's going anywhere. So it looks like what they've done is just they want to just get it finished by the time both parties leave. This could be like the big, for them, an amazing moment of agreement that they just say, let's just move it and let's not have all of these complicating amendments in there. So I think at this point, I don't know. I don't think we're necessarily going to see that Iran sanction stuff in there. But that's what they're talking about right now. They're talking about Buck McKeon, who's the chairman of House Armed Services, is talking to reporters right now about it while we're here. So it's gonna move quickly this week. That's their plan.
Very interesting. Yeah. I'm sorry. Well, all right. Now let's go ahead. Of course, judges are going to be voted in with 51 votes, and that includes Patricia Millett. She'll be put on the D.C. Circuit Court. But what about the NLRB, so-called recess appointments, which court after court has said were unconstitutional? That's going to the Supreme Court, is it not?
Right, but it doesn't matter now because they can just the Senate can just vote those through. They changed the rules now so that all these appointees only need a majority vote. So that's right. They can challenge the recess appointment, but the Senate can just push those back through again, and then they can have their nominee. In fact, they're gonna move the other circuit court nominees, and they're going to have the court stacked with a majority of Democrats on that very powerful court for the very first time since 1986. And that is a huge, huge deal for the court. As you know, it's the second highest court in the land, and it is going to have a Democratic majority. So they're going to be deciding cases that are extremely important, having to do with health care reform, the environment, all kinds of things. So the filibuster rule change that led to us, where we're confirming these judges is a really big deal.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm a little confused because I see that Mitch McConnell is taking the opposition to this to the Supreme Court, and that the Supreme Court has granted a 15-minute oral argument to the Republican leader and his colleagues, and that'll be heard on, I think, on January 13th. And Miguel Estrada, ironically enough, might lead that argument. But I thought that Congress people had no standing in front of the court. I'm so confused. That's why a congressperson can't go and sue the president or try to stop the president through the courts by saying he's abusing his power by selectively enforcing laws and changing, established law. I thought Republicans I thought congressional members don't have standing. So how is McConnell and Estrada representing the Republicans or in the Senate? How are they going to have standing? I don't get it.
Well, they can file if they have an amicus that they filed, which is kind of on behalf, then they are allowed. I believe Supreme Court does allow people who are amicus filers.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I read that that they were filing an amicus brief in favor of that, and I believe that's how they're going to go about doing it. And it's interesting how all this stuff is going to play out. But I think the most important thing that's happening, even beyond the Supreme Court, is really this rules change, because Congress can now just push these nominees through, really eliminate.
Oh yeah.
The controversy.
And the death panel bills too. The death panel appointees as well.
Yeah, all executive branch appointees and judicial appointees. Now they say that this does not apply to Supreme Court, but that's the Democratic interpretation of this. The Republicans feel like, this will apply.
This is just unbelievable. If the Republicans are smart, they use this as another cornerstone of their battle, in 2014 and against Hillary, or whoever the Democratic nominee is, because this is just a power grab it's leading people like Jonathan Turley to say that Obama is running an imperial presidency and that he's become what the founding fathers feared. I mean, that's strong stuff.
I think what the Democrats are counting on, my calculation is that, again, that they might risk losing the Senate next year. We've all looked at the rankings. It looks like there's a chance the Republicans could split the Senate. So Democrats wouldn't have an opportunity to move forward any nominees after 2014 potentially. However, I think they feel pretty confident that they can maintain the White House, which means even if Republicans are in control, if the White House remains under the control of the Democrats, they don't have to worry about the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
not as much.
Right, not as much. Yeah. All right. You know what? It's getting crazier and crazier. I thank you as always. We'll speak to you soon. So I won't wish you Merry Christmas yet. We'll speak to you before then.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan. Susan Ferrechio, Chief Congressional Correspondent for the Washington Examiner, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, our friend Banafsheh Zand will join us, Iranian-born writer and film producer, to talk about Iran and what's going on there and the duplicative nature of their promises and agreements and what we can expect from them going forward. All that straight ahead right here on the Steve Malzberg Show. You know it, you love it. If you want to weigh in, by the way, 877 Newsmax, you could still do that. And right here on the Newsmax TV and radio.
The Steve Malzberg Show.